Hey guys, so I'm back with another video, and today is going to be a book review on Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I went into this month. This was on my to-be-read list for the month. I went into this knowing that it had a bit of controversial views on the book, and as you can tell, I have marked it up quite a bit, but that is mostly for conversational bits and pieces for when I have to talk about this with my partner for our lit circles. But there are also some things that I have marked that I'm going to be bringing up within this review. So if you guys don't know, this book is about Holden Caulfield, and he is, I believe, a 16-year-old boy, and he gets kicked out of every school imaginable because he flunks out of every class pretty much except English. English is his best subject, and he ends up getting kicked out of Pensy, which is the school he was going to, and decides that instead of going home and letting his parents know he got kicked out of this school again, he's just going to wander around New York for a bit. And he ends up staying in a bit of weird places and meeting some weird people. My overall thoughts and opinions on this book, I overall rated it 2.5/3 stars. I gave the plot 2 stars, character development 3 stars, and then the writing style 3 stars as well. So overall, it would have come out as a 2.6 average, so that's why I'm saying 2.5/3, because if you round it up, it would be 3. 4 and below, let it go. 5 and above, give it a shove. Anyway, so there are some things that I liked and did not like about this book, which you will have with a lot of books, and I feel like my dislikes overcome my likes because there is a lot more. So I'm just going to tell you what I liked and did not like about this book. And just so you don't think I'm pulling this out of my butthole, I actually did write some things down because I knew I wanted to have some very valid points in this review, but I also need this for my lit circle because we have to present on the book, so I need to have points as to why I think it was not that great of a book. So I don't know what it was about the book, but there was something in it that just kept me intrigued as I kept reading it. While it did get worse as the book went on, I still was intrigued enough to read it. I really liked how the story was written in a first-person perspective from Holden Caulfield's thought processes, and that it showed the thought processes of a teenager. And it was kind of written, I don't want to say like a journal because it wasn't written like a journal, but it was written so that we knew what he was thinking at every single moment, literally every single moment pretty much. It was a very reasonable read, and there was a lot of explanations, and there were characters that had a lot of personality to them. For example, his little sister Phoebe, who I seem to be thinking is like his best friend because he just loves her so much. She is this little girl who's very smart and understands things, but she can have her times where she has an attitude, and Holden goes into explaining about her a lot. And there are certain characters that he explains to you about a lot, like Stradlater and Ackley and his family and everything like that. So it was nice seeing that some of the characters actually have a personality and they aren't just these one-dimensional characters set in this book, and they actually play a part in it at given times, especially characters he just randomly mentions. The author does go in and explain a little bit about them, so that was really nice. And there were some very good quotes / lessons that could be taken from this book, which is cool, but it's not that the book was so bad that you couldn't find anything good about it. It was more of the fact that there were only a few lessons and some memorable quotes that could be used and applied in everyday life. And I'm not trying to say that every book has to have a lesson that could be applied to life every day, but to make a read something you like, that's something I at least look forward to. Those are some of the things that I just liked about the book. There really isn't much else that I fully liked about the book because I started off reading it and I was feeling very good about the book, and I was like, oh man, this is nice. But as soon as I kept reading, it felt more like a chore to me. I had set up a reading plan so I can get this done before the end of the month, which was totally okay because I wanted to have it done because then I would have all my books on my TBR list done. And I set up this reading plan, and I was okay with reading these 40 pages a day, but as I kept on reading and reading, it felt more like a chore and not something I wanted to do, which I wasn't okay with. I don't like reading books that I feel like I have to read, even though I do have to read this book for class. I was the one that chose it, but for me, when I was reading it, it felt like somebody else had chosen the book for me, which didn't make my reading experience too enjoyable. So I feel as though the reason why I didn't enjoy the book as much is because it did feel like it was a chore that I had to do while reading it, and it took all of me to finish the last 50 or so pages because I mean I did want to see what was going to happen in the end. I wasn't feeling the book anymore. So I'm going to tell you some things that I didn't like about the book that probably made it even more strenuous and more chore feeling, in my opinion. The number one thing that I realized with this book is it's extremely repetitive. A lot of the times Holden Caulfield repeats himself multiple times. There are multiple occasions where, like 5 or 6 times a page, he said how something makes him depressed, how he nearly hates somebody, how he like nearly wants to kill somebody, and he just repeats himself all the time, and it gets really annoying after the first couple times that this happens, of him repeating himself, because you're just like, okay, like I understood that the first time. And that's what really bothered me about this book, was because I had seen it the first time, I had seen it the second time, then after the third, fourth, fifth, maybe 10th time, I was like, okay, I get it. These types of situations upset you, they make you angry, whatever. So I wasn't too happy with that, because I didn't like it. I felt like the book was written by a child, in my opinion, when that happens. Because, you know, children, they always repeat things no matter what. They'll be like, oh, look at these new shoes I got. And they're like, oh, look at these new shoes I got. Let me show you the lights on my new shoes I just got. And it's just very annoying to have to read that, especially if the author is supposed to be a well-known, better author. This book was also very vulgar in a sense, and I'm not meaning it in like, okay, it's not in like the gross type of vulgar way, but there is a lot of curse words in it, and a lot of GDs, and just a lot of mention of sexual acts and deeds. While it isn't very upfront and very out there about it, it is still mentioned quite a few times, and there are multiple times where Holden is sitting there and he's talking to people and starts talking about sex. There's this one occasion when he was talking to his friend Luce, and he was like, yo, how's your sex life? And he just kept asking and asking and asking, and I think that's like what also made me not like the book, because it's not an everyday occasion where you have somebody come up to you like after not talking to them for a while and be like, oh, how's your sex life? I wouldn't even ask somebody that if I was close friends with them. That isn't something that you should ask people, like unless they want to tell you. You probably shouldn't ask that, because that's very personal, and Holden seemed to have crossed a lot of boundaries with that. The book also wasn't really realistic. If I'm not mistaken, which I might be, he is like 16, 17 years old. There was a part where he hired a prostitute. While they did not do anything, it was still the fact that he hired a prostitute. He was caught in bars, drinking, clubs, drinking. He kept trying to go necking, which is like fooling around with a bunch of these girls that he didn't even know. And I mean, in today's society, yeah, that is something that happens, because, you know, our society is a bit screwed up in that sense. But in this time period, I didn't think that there was something that went on, and it wasn't really realistic to look through from the eyes of a teenager, mostly because, one, you wouldn't really hire a prostitute at teenager age. I mean, I wouldn't. But that's usually something you think about if you're like an adult, and so that was a bit weird. And it's like everybody overlooked his age and just ignored the fact that he was a young kid. So the book wasn't really realistic in that sense. It was realistic in the sense that a lot of teenagers are very cynical about the world around them, but in other senses, not realistic whatsoever. Also, with the way the book was written, the thought process seemed to be a little dysfunctional and scattered and a bit rambled and just broken. Like I had mentioned earlier, it seemed like a kid had wrote it in certain spots, and it seems the thought process of Holden Caulfield and in the writing was written by a kid, because their thought processes go from like, oh, I'm hungry, oh, look at this new video game, oh, look at that squirrel that's over there. It's kind of like somebody who has ADHD or ADD, and I'm not trying to insult people that have those, that's just what I am comparing it to, because it seems like it's just very disorganized, disruptive, and it didn't really flow that easily. This also made it very confusing in parts, to the point where things didn't make sense, because he would go from talking to one thing and then talking about another thing, and you'd be like, okay, where did the transition from this topic to this topic, like where is that? And it really was bothersome trying to read that, because you kind of have to piece together the bits and pieces of what he was trying to say, and I don't want a book where I'm trying to fit puzzle pieces together to figure out what somebody's trying to say. That's not an enjoyable time for me. Another point is I don't want to say it over-sexualized things in the book, but in my thoughts and opinions, this might be something I'm ignorant about or don't know much about, but I'm thinking that this is obviously written back in a time period back then, and I didn't really think that things in that time period were sexualized as much as this book had sexualized it. A lot of the times Holden would go on about saying how he wanted to go necking with somebody, how he wanted to have sex, lose his virginity just to get it over with. He asked about a lot of sexual things, and it just like, he would say how like these girls look nice and how he'd like want to get with them, and it seemed very over sexualized in my opinion. And I know a lot of the time today things are very over sexualized, but I didn't think it was like back then that these things were over sexualized. And then the last thing that I really didn't like about the book, it was very contradicting, and I don't really fully know how to explain this. It's just that Holden would say that he should do something and he wouldn't go and do it, yet he'd go and do like the complete opposite. And it just seemed like he would say that something should go a certain way, and he would do the complete opposite, knowing full well that he should be doing that. And I mean, I guess that's a teenager's mindset a lot of the time, but it still was a bit annoying to read, because you're sitting there reading and you're like, dude, you should be doing this. Why aren't you? And it was very irksome, very. So I mean, it wasn't that bad of a read. I got through it, but I didn't really feel like reading it towards the end. I felt like it was more of a chore, and I didn't like it whatsoever towards the end, because I don't like reading books where I feel like I have to read them. And I did pick this book, and yes, I do have to read it for class, but this felt like a book that was picked from somebody who knows nothing about you, knows nothing about your reading style, and they're just like, here, read this because I think you'd like it, and it's not something you'd like at all. And I know a lot of you who really, really, really love Catcher in the Rye, and I'm not trying to insult you by saying this or any means like lessen your love for the book. You have full right to love this book. I have full right to dislike this book. But it isn't something I enjoyed, and I definitely don't think I'm going to pick up J.D. Salinger's work in the near future or anytime soon again. Who knows? This book might have just been like the rotten egg in the bunch. Thank you for listening to my thoughts and opinions on this book. If you have any thoughts and opinions of this book, leave them in the comments down below, because I definitely would love to know what you think, if you agree, if you disagree. And I am up for some hearty discussion about this book, and I will not be offended if you sit there and say your thoughts are unjustified, because this book is amazing. Like, I know we all have our own opinions here. But if you like this video, please give it a huge thumbs up and hit that red button down below to subscribe to my channel and be notified of any more videos I post in the near future. I am trying to get on a normal Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday uploading schedule, so look forward to my video on Tuesday. And until next time, bye guys. I'd probably scream. So next I'm going to recommend some books that I have